Everybody at 6:30. This meeting is not only being recorded, but it's being live broadcast. So my name is Kathleen DeSimone. I'm the Attleboro mayor, and I am thankful that you all came to learn more about our current water supply situation. I envision this conversation as very much, first of all, let me introduce the folks on the panel. Fire Chief Scott LaChance, City Planner Gary Arasian, Water Superintendent Courtney Allen, and our Health Officer, Dr. Quinn. My idea was to have Courtney pretty much present an overview of where we are and how we got here, and then to take your questions and comments. So I don't intend to do a whole lot of talking to you, but to answer your questions and concerns that you may have. I think that's a lot of the information you're going to get, just FYI, is on the Water Department website already, yes. So it's there. We try to publish as much as possible and put everything out there that people could want, should they want to go find it, which is part of the challenge, right, is to get people to find it. So thank you all for coming. When you do, if you do come forward to ask questions, AACS has asked that you speak into the microphone because the mics in here have to be close. So if you're in the back, you're going to have to come up and get to the podium so that they can record you asking your questions. Everybody good? All right, so, I mean, let's be honest. None of us want to be here. I know I don't want to be here. But that comes with the gig. And the situation we find ourselves in is not ideal. It is, like all things in life, temporary, but we got to get through it. It is serious and it is concerning. And it is very, very, very much related to the drought that we find ourselves in. All right. Contrary to what you may hear, we haven't had significant rain in a while. We are in a significant drought. And thus we find ourselves here with a water supply situation. We're not the only ones. Other parts of the Commonwealth are experiencing difficulties, and we'll be experiencing more if the situation continues. But as Courtney will tell you, part of our situation here is we have a surface supply water system, which means our water is replenished by rainfall. No rainfall, it makes keeping the water limits at where they are challenging. Years ago, when some of you folks may know better than I, the city pulled for several wells around the city. And I guess at some point in the 80s, and I don't know, my friend Gary may know, our chief, the wells were closed. We are very much seeking to reestablish them because in today's world, you have to have access to groundwater. So that's on our agenda already. Please know that. We do have plans to do some dredging. That was already on the radar. Please know that. And we very much have an idea of what needs to be done, but we find ourselves in a situation where the stuff that's in the plans is not going. These are not short-term cheap fixes. This is a pivot point that's going to take a little while to get there, all right? But we will get there. But we find ourselves here nonetheless. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Allen, who can kind of give you the lay of the land. And then if any other panelists want to comment before I turn it over to the residents, feel free to do so. But go ahead, Courtney, tell them what you know.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm going to start by just briefly giving a short description of the reservoir system because it kind of gives some background on how we got here. We have two plants. We have the plant Wading River up in Mansfield, which is our smaller plant, and we also have the larger plant down here in Attleboro on West Street. They operate off of two completely separate reservoir systems. There's 3 reservoirs that feed Wading River, and there's 4 that feed the plant here in Attleboro. They share the distribution system, so when they're both operational, both waters get into the system. What you're looking at here is part of the reservoir system of the Wading River plant. I didn't show our northernmost reservoir, which is Crocker Pond, which if you go up to Gillette Stadium on a nice Sunday, is one of the last lakes off to your left. I didn't include it. It's very, very minimal storage. And basically, if we do control and release water from there, there's well withdrawals, there's cranberry bog withdrawals, and all sorts of things before the water can get to us. So it typically doesn't make it to us at all during a release. So the reservoir of concern in that watershed is right up here to the left. That's Lake Miramichi. It's located on the border of Foxborough and Plainville. It's about a 500 million gallon reservoir. It's our second largest reservoir. From there, the water will follow this yellow line and make it down to the plant down here, down at the bottom right, and that is where the Wading River plant is situated. It's situated on Blake's Pond, which is also a very, very tiny reservoir, so there's no substantial storage there. So the bulk of your storage for Wading River is coming from up here at Lake Miramichi. This system is currently at full or just about near full levels. That is because the Wading River has been mostly offline the last couple of years. We did start it on November 4th. So we will start to see levels deplete up there a little bit. The good news with there is that area has, at least so far, gotten a little bit more rain than we have here in Attleboro. So the reservoir system for the West Street plant, again, there's a system of 4 reservoirs. This one right up here is Hoppin Hill Reservoir. That's our northernmost for the West Street plant. It is a storage reservoir. It's located, everybody probably drives by it all the time, right at the CVS where Route 1 and 1A meet in North Attleboro. The lower part of that map, you can see Luther, and Luther, for those of you that aren't familiar, is basically buried in the woods off of Mount Hope Ave across the street from the main treatment plant. So again, here's Luther. Down here is Orr's Pond, and up here is Manchester Reservoir, which is the big one up on the highway. Excuse me. Hoppin Hill, Luther, and Orr's Pond are all part of the natural 7-mile river system. What this means for us is that if it actually rains, these 3 reservoirs get all their water from the river system itself. They get direct rainfall from runoff from storm drains out on the roads and just cross-country runoff from lawns and from the woods. Important to note is that Manchester, which is our largest reservoir, it's about the same size as all the rest put together, is not a natural part of the river system. It is filled solely, basically, if from rain falling directly on it, or if we release water from Hoppin Hill down through Luther, we can either bring it down to the plant directly, or we can pump it to storage at Manchester. But again, there's no runoff, there's no river, there's nothing that goes naturally into Manchester Reservoir. This is kind of a schematic. This comes from our SCADA system at the plant that kind of shows you how that works. So the plant is down here. Luther would be in the middle with the pumps, and an in-between between Manchester and Orr's. So we can either bring water up or down from Luther. Manchester, it's basically, again, just down. So here's kind of how we got where we are. Actually, let me go back to the reservoirs for a minute. We did start, if you look at the rainfall chart, if you look through May, we got lots of rain, near historic and historic some particular months. So we did start this year with the reservoir system, the entire thing full and spilling, which is typical for us in a normal spring. How we got here is we're a surface water system. So even if it keeps raining, we can only store as much as will actually fit in the existing reservoirs. We have some neighbors that are luckier than us, and I've been asked this question. They are groundwater systems. They're not quite in the shape we are in yet because basically if it rains, they can store the water in the aquifer instead of losing it over the dam, which unfortunately a surface water system does. So again, you can see the really high, nice rainfall through the early spring, and that actually started the end of last year. And then we have, we have a steady drop-off coming into June, July. And then when we hit September and October, and this month, we're seeing substantially less. What we're seeing over the course of the year, even with the heavy rainfalls in the spring, that we're about a foot of rain behind for the year. And what that actually means is we're about 25% down. Our average year, we get 51 inches of rain. We've gotten less than 39. So we're in rough shape, and this should be our rainy season. What's noticeable right here is September and October. We usually get about 10.5 inches of rain, and we got less than 2.5 for the 2 months combined. And that rolls into where the state actually declared the drought earlier last week. Go here. This is where we actually take our measurements at Manchester Reservoir. If you look up here, you can actually tell where a water level typically is. That's our full level. That's at 146.8 feet above sea level. We are down, this picture was actually last week, but if you look at the measurements, we're kind of down in the rocks. Our current level is at 134.5 feet over sea level. It's the lowest since we've been able to bring Manchester directly to the plant, and it's our 8th lowest on record since the reservoir was constructed in the 1950s. So that brings us to where we are. Again, we're low. This is certainly lower than me or any of my staff have ever seen this reservoir. So basically, we start prioritizing. We are a drinking water facility, but our number one priority is always going to be fire. Firefighting is number one. Sanitary use for showers and toilets is number two, and drinking water would be third, followed by any other uses. So what we've done so far is, this is another graph. This is basically just a comparison. The red line is where we see Manchester during each month of the year on a typical year in the last 10 years. And this blue line, you can see a steady drop starting as soon as the rain ended in May. And that's a picture last week of the current level of the reservoir, and you can kind of tell where the water level usually is. When we're full, it's way up here. Excuse me. So what we've done so far, we went to full outdoor restrictions in mid-July. Again, we're looking at firefighting, sanitary, and drinking water. So what we do when we institute outdoor restrictions is we cut off the less necessary, and that always starts with lawn watering and things like that. This did, in July, help our numbers come down. In August and September, our production cut to basically about winter use, a little over 3.5 million gallons a day. Our average summer day in a normal year is usually about 6.5 million gallons a day, and it can be as high as over 8. So the restrictions did work. In October, we recommended indoor conservation measures for both residents and for our businesses and our other companies that actually have production. And that basically got October usage to less than winter, less than we normally see in the winter. So basically we're at or below winter usage. But what we're seeing in the reservoir system, because it hasn't rained, is the levels are still dropping. It's not an emergency yet. It's getting there. We're doing our best and basically working on ways around this and bringing other water in before it becomes an essential emergency for firefighting and sanitary use. So what we've worked on so far is we're working on a startup of the interconnection with Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Although they are a surface water, they're in a larger watershed and a separate watershed from us, which is good news. They also have about twice the population, but about 5 times the stored volume that we do. So they're staying in better shape so far. Our tentative schedule to bring that online is, fingers crossed, early December. The mayor and I have done everything we can to expedite that project. That station, when it comes online, is capable of producing 1 million gallons a day. So current production, it's about 25% or more of the needed water for the system. Startup, when it does happen, we will get notifications out. For those that live in South Attleboro, it will discolor the water for a little while. The water in some of those mains has been traveling south and west for over 100 years, and it's going to be pushed backwards. We will have flushing crews out to try to alleviate that as quickly as possible. The other thing we've been working on is an interconnection with a neighboring community for an emergency hydrant-to-hydrant connection. And fingers crossed, that could be running in the next couple of days. The other community is guaranteeing us 250,000 gallons a day, and as much as 500,000.
Mansfield.
Okay, I didn't know if I could mention it yet.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Town manager Dumas got approval from the Mansfield Select Board to allow us access to emergency water, and we're grateful to Kevin. And for the record, just a tip of the hat to former Mayor Dumas. It was Mayor Dumas's idea to establish the Pawtucket Attleboro Emergency Water Interconnect. So particularly grateful to him for that idea. It's been a long time coming, but it's coming right on time. So,
Yes, it is. So again, that hopefully several days, we can get Mansfield up and running. We have reached out to Seekonk and Norton, if those sources are needed. They're smaller volumes and may be slower to get connected, but we're working on that too. Excuse me. We're also looking into, for those of you that are familiar with the West Street plant, we have the 2 old wells out front. We're doing basically drinking water testing on those to see if we can bring those into the West Street plant directly. That will have to be approved by DEP, but the sampling was done this morning. And that could be another 250,000 gallons a day. The other, oh my gosh, so between those sources, basically, we should be able to meet system demand between those and Wading River, and West Street coming on periodically. West Street does still need to operate just to turn over the water in the plant so that it stays fresh. So that's what we're working on right now. Future, and the mayor already mentioned a couple of these, but I'll mention them again. We're finishing up dredging assessments for 3 of our reservoirs. That would be Hoppin Hill in North Attleboro, Orr's Pond in Attleboro, and Blake's Pond, where the Wading River plant is situated. All of those will increase capacity of those reservoirs, and they'll also improve the water quality coming from those reservoirs, especially Orr's Pond, so we can extend the life of that pond each summer. These aren't quick projects. The assessments, we have one done for Hoppin Hill. I'm awaiting the other 2. And probably about a year of design and a year of construction. So they're certainly for the future, but we're working on them. And Gary can probably talk to more about this as well. We're looking at potential for other water sources, groundwater sources throughout the city, including the potential to bring back online the Holden Street wells that were decommissioned. I believe those were in the early 1980s. Again, and it's a future project. We would either need to be able to get the water over to one of the plants or treat it on site, because regulations have certainly changed since those wells were brought offline. So I'm open for questions unless someone else wants to add.
Yeah, before we turn it over, 2 points I want to emphasize. What Courtney just said about the things we're trying to do to get water in the system, right, is for use, right? Not replenishment. So what I think people need to realize is the longer this goes, the longer it's going to go. So if we can establish use, enough water for daily use, we're going to have a replenishment issue, which means there's a good chance that some of these restrictions are going to continue to be in place in the spring and summer. And I know there's going to be outcry from people about their lawns, and I know that people have invested a lot in their property and their lawns. So just be advised that in the absence of an extreme amount of rain in the near future, the level 4 restrictions are going to be in place for a while. Do you concur?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to set the expectation. So use is good. I'm happy to have use. Replenishment is almost as important as use, right, to get back to where we need to be. So just to plant that expectation. And on a related note, Courtney mentioned that the number 1, use of water is fire prevention. Chief LaChance is going to tell you that in the extremely dry conditions, and you guys, if you were paying attention on Friday, it was like the apocalypse out there. Chief, how many brush fires did you have today alone?
Today we've had 6.
So I want to emphasize, if you smoke or know someone who smokes, the lits don't, this isn't a judgment on smokers, just don't toss the lit cigarettes out the window, because that little bit of ember combined with a little bit of wind is part of the issue, right, Chief?
That's a big part.
And then you said earlier, Chief, that some of the sparks were floating and landing in other parts and causing other fires.
So one of the things, when we have weather like this, even when we extinguish a fire, you'll see, if you've ever had a campfire, when you put it out, you get a lot of embers that fly up in the air. Normally, the ground is damp enough that that really doesn't do much damage and doesn't cause a lot of fires. But when it's dry like this and you have high winds, those small embers, can go literally a mile or more in the air. And if the conditions are just right, when they land, they'll ignite another fire. So, there's definitely a lot of that. It's not just here, it's all over the Commonwealth that we're having brush fires. This is the biggest brush fire season in Massachusetts in over 30 or 40 years. The thing that makes a difference, it's actually across the whole Commonwealth. It's not just, one area. For us here in Attleboro, this is probably the most brush fires that I've seen in 25 years on the department. And I don't recall too many times where we've had, 4 or 5 going on at the same time. Friday, we had 5 at the same time. And today we had 3 at the same time, and we've had at least 6. I'm sure when I get back out, back to the station, they'll keep me updated that there's been some more. I would ask everybody to do 2 things: to be diligent. If you're next to some of the places where we've had some brush fires, the places that are notorious right now are where there's open fields. Like Locust Valley, places like that, Highland Country Club. Even though we haven't had anything there, we're seeing them at Manchester Reservoir. We're seeing them at the dog park. All those areas. If you see anything, smell anything, we'd much rather receive the call and go there and have it be unfounded, as opposed to wait till we show up and we've got a couple of acres going, because that takes us literally, a couple of hours to extinguish it. And to be honest, we can't extinguish it 100%, no matter how much water we put on it. And we're putting probably, I'd say 30,000 gallons of water on one brush fire, if it's an acre or more. But even with all of that water, there's going to be some spots that we call them hot spots that we don't get. And if you're out and about and you see something smoldering, call right away, because we'll go back and wet it down and hopefully stop it from reigniting.
Thank you, Chief. And I should say I'm grateful for Chief LaChance and the great work of the Attleboro Fire Department, both in the recent past and more than that.
Thank you, Mayor.
They are on it. I should also introduce Economic Development Director Chris McDermott, and in the back is our Building Inspector Bill McDonough, and I think I have all city staff here. So does any of the panelists want to say anything before I turn it over to the residents? Good. All right, folks, we're here to answer your questions and comments and all of that, so come on down early. You just have to come to the microphone at the podium.
Well, let me add one thing.
Yeah, go
Phil's
ahead.
coming forward. So at the end of Courtney's presentation, she mentioned, maybe Gary might want to chime in on a couple of things. So when this all kind of came to a head with the administration, the mayor called numerous meetings at City Hall. There had to be, at times 15, 20 of us around the table trying to grasp the problem, understand the problem, and what we could do in the short term to address the situation. So what I do a lot, unfortunately or fortunately, is in the abstract. I can't take immediate action when it comes to regulations and adopting regulations. But what we can do is we took the initiative on applying. We filed actually a week ago on Friday, myself and the environmental planner from my department, based on the optics that that Courtney shared with us. Given that we're a surface water community, my reaction to the mayor was, well, we haven't tapped groundwater sources in a very, very long time. The wells are on the Bungie River Water Resource Protection District. Those were decommissioned, I'm going to say, circa late 1970s, early 1980s, and we are not a groundwater community. So as part of, please understand, part of climate change, it's very real. And part of climate change is, what does a community do in terms of resiliency? What are we doing to adapt to that climate change? So one of the immediate things we did, fortunately the timing was perfect, is about 2 years ago, the Municipal Council adopted what we call the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan. That was all prepared by 2 grants that we received from the federal government and from the state government. And by having this plan adopted by the municipal council, that unlocked a number of grant programs that we have access to. We've already applied for 2 grant sources. One is called BRIC, B-R-I-C, from FEMA, which is a federal program. We also applied for an MVP grant, also known as an action grant. Those 2 projects are underway. I'm just trying to give you some context. So as Courtney unveiled this information, not only to the mayor, and the mayor unveiled it back to us, and we were all kind of thinking as a think tank what we could do in the short term and medium term to address the situation. The environmental planner and I applied for filed what's called an expression of interest to the municipal vulnerability preparedness program, and we requested a $300,000 grant to perform a hydrogeologic survey of the entire city to identify potential aquifer sites. I'm not suggesting in any way that these aquifers, that if once we identify them, whether it's one or n number, that we're going to put them all online, but to identify whether or not we actually have groundwater aquifers. When I say groundwater aquifer, that's a redundancy. They are, of course, groundwater. That's why it's an aquifer. But nonetheless, the purpose of that would not be to replace or supplant the surface water supply system, but to augment them in situations like this, so that as part of our resiliency plan to demonstrate our adaptiveness is once Mother Nature changes the switch again. It's really ironic that about a year ago, we had a similar forum like this at City Hall because we were reacting to tremendous flooding, particularly down in South Attleboro. Here we are 12 months later, trying to address a situation completely opposite, 180. So once Mother Nature gets her act in shape and we get a little more consistency out of the weather, what we're trying to do, at least the planning department, in its effort to help modify or address the situation, is to get the grant to do this hydrogeologic survey, to identify these aquifer sites, share those with the water department, and as part of the annual capital improvements plan that we prepare on 5-year planning horizons, is then to request the funding so that we could actually create or tap wells and have them ready to go so that they could augment surface water supply issues when they arise as this. So that's one thing. Again, it's kind of in the abstract, folks. I can't tell you specifically what those are, but it's something that we're putting in place. Again, but this will all come into manifestation maybe over the course of the next 3 to 4 years to get this done. But that's just as important to avoid a situation like this 3 to 4 years from now. Unfortunately, I can't tell you as your planning director what I'm doing today because they really have to rely on Courtney, the mayor, and others around this table in terms of what we could do in the short term. But the mayor asked us, she directed us, we took the initiative, and one might say, well, big deal, we'll get a $300,000 grant. Well, that's how you start with some of these things. So please understand we're working on that aspect of it as we speak. Hopefully we'll find out in a couple of months what the verdict is on that grant application. I'm confident we're going to get it. And we'll move forward with that study, and that will then transfer into, once we identify where those aquifer sites are in the city, to pick those with the highest volume. And again, it's all gravity driven, depending on where the site is, the water treatment plant on West Street, and how that could get engineered and actually tap that aquifer when needed at some point in the future.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, Mayor.
And so just to Gary's point, there's other kind of tangential things that we've been talking about, right? Smaller lawns, more drought-resistant plantings, all of that, right, which is a work in progress. But I respectfully submit that fundamentally, we need to change the way we think about water. In the United States, we're very lucky. We turn it on, we get as much as we want whenever we want it. That's not true in the rest of the world. And I think, dare I say, as a country, we really need to start thinking a little bit more about the way we use water and the respect we have for it. And it's situations like this are a stark reminder that it's water. Everything else is secondary. So I just want to plant seeds too, that if you agree with me, if you're like-minded and think like we need to just really literally value water more, we need to start spreading that word and promoting more conservation, not only in times of need, but all the time. So that's a more long-term game, but that's also on our agenda too, is plantings and grass and conservation and all that other stuff. So anybody ready to come up? And come on, thank you. Just, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name, just for the record.
My name is Beth Burke, and I'm wondering if you are developing a plan to enforce the restrictions next year.
Yeah, and I was hoping the police department, but Courtney can speak to the restrictions. So first of all, I just know for the record, a lot of folks are hesitant to call on their neighbors or friends who are using, I don't know if you're talking about water, lawn watering path. Yeah, it's an issue. It's an issue, and man, it's annoying. It's a big, yeah. But Courtney, you want to speak to folks about the process when you get a call or a report of someone watering their lawn?
Sure. A typical summer, when we have the 9 to 5 regular restrictions that we've all gotten used to at this point, sometimes people don't read their postcards or might not, see the postings around the city, things like that. Typical year, we will send someone from the plant out, knock on the door, hand them the flyer, explain to them the need for the restrictions. So typical year, somebody gets one free pass. We write down all the addresses and we track them. Anything after that basically is a call to the police dispatch, and they're visited by an officer, and the fine levels go up. We do have some repeat offenders. Again, with staff, we drive around and look. We do appreciate that we actually do get most of our information from residents and businesses that, let us know that their neighbors are still watering. Actually, I heard one from a resident just this morning with someone out power washing. But, if we're not there, we can't see it. So we do appreciate it, and there are fines being handed out.
Yeah. I mean, we may have to increase the fine. Not only is it an enforcement issue, it might have to be a stiffer penalty issue as well, but.
Well, we do have the ability to shut off, but we haven't gone there yet. We
that's
haven't
a
gone
penalty,
there yet. Last
Yeah,
resort.
That is a last resort. But again, some of your point, Beth, goes just to making people think a little bit more. It's not about your lawn, right? I mean, it's about all of us, but I appreciate your point. And I was hoping the police department would be here to just talk about what they see on their end when they knock on doors. But I'm hoping that if a police officer knocks on your door and tells you to cut it out, that you're actually going to cut it out. But it is an issue, and it's particularly frustrating. Excuse me. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming.
What's your name, sir?
Doug Robbins.
Hey, Doug.
One of the things I'm interested in is the future, like everybody's talking about, in water use, like everybody's talking about. Attleboro is building a lot of apartments, or not Attleboro, but there are a lot of apartments. How much use is those apartments and plans for putting up more apartments is going to affect our usage just for fighting fires? That's what you need, or sanitary reasons you need, and has it been addressed?
I don't know what you mean by address, Doug, but yes, we're building apartments, and before.
Let me explain.
Yes, sir.
Let me know. Address.
Okay, sorry, sir.
You have to have some kind of thought on the future.
Of course.
And when you're putting in 5,000 apartments, 6,000 apartments, 10 apartments, all those people are going to be using water. You're going to be putting more demand on our resources. So the thought is, how are we going to do that? That's thought. That's dealing with the future.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yep.
And not increasing my taxes or somebody else's taxes, because, I'm on a set, I only make so much money a month. I'm retired. I can't afford all this stuff.
Okay.
So what are you going to do about it?
Sure, so first of all, we're not.
Let me, hang on one second. So Doug, first of all, respectfully, I want to emphasize the point again. The situation right now is drought related. To your point about construction, and Courtney can speak to this better than I, the largest use of residential water is lawn watering. What is the one thing that apartments don't have?
Lawns.
Lawns.
Do they pay
Apartments
taxes?
are not the problem, my
But they
friend.
don't pay taxes either.
Well,
They do.
They
Of course-
do,
of
but
course they do.
respectfully,
The
Doug,
owners,
Well,
but not like we do.
But they pay taxes, so.
Per person. That's the estimate that most towns use. Indoor use.
well, again, there's plenty of research that says the largest use is lawns, and that's one thing the apartments don't have. But Courtney, do you
So
want to
then we
speak?
need more enforcement. Because, right down the street from me, there's a Chinese temple going up. They put in, I don't know how many acres of grass, and they're still watering 3 times a day.
Okay, I was unaware.
Are
of
they
that.
on a well system? I don't know. I don't see it. I don't
Careful, Doug.
I don't read Chinese, so,
Yeah.
I have no idea. But
Yeah, no, that's news to us, so I was unaware.
I don't know how it can be, because people go by that every single day.
So I
Police
heard-
officers go by
So I
there.
heard somebody say they are on well, so.
Well, that's good. I'm glad they do.
Building inspector, Bill, do you? Okay.
All right.
There you go.
Do I have a sign?
I haven't been over there, but we can ask them to put a sign up there. Yeah,
Is it
that's
in
a-
English?
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. When you see it, you don't know, but I appreciate your point. Courtney, do you want to, oh, I'm sorry, Gary, do you want
But
to?
getting back to all the
Yeah.
apartments
Yeah,
and
sure.
all the building we're gonna have, there's gonna be a future where there's gonna be more demand on water, flushing toilets, taking showers, doing laundry. I mean, I know that lawns are a big thing, but we don't enforce it, or we don't enforce it enough, I should say. Because everybody around me is watering their lawns. They even got fined and they're still watering. So what are we gonna do with all the buildings?
Sure. So first of all, we're not approving 5,000 to 6,000 apartments. So, you gotta watch out on any of those anecdotes or speculate. They're not 5,000 to 6,000. If you look at.
I
built-
was just throwing a number.
Yeah, but that's important.
Okay.
That's critical.
I was trying to make a point.
I understand sometimes you have to exaggerate the example to make your point. I totally get that, and I've done that in the past, but I think for purposes of this forum, that we ought not do that. We have to talk empirical evidence, like what is driving this. So a few answers. First, you ask, what are we going to do? So every year, the city of Attleboro prepares and adopts a capital improvements plan that's prepared over 5-year planning horizons. Courtney, in her capacity as water superintendent, every year submits plans for a variety of ways to upgrade, improve, expand capacity and infrastructure of the city's water supply. So we do that. It's incremental. The city can't afford, no community can afford all of it all at the same time. So what we do is we bite off pieces that we can based on whatever the current water rate is, whatever we could bond for. But every year, please understand, we chisel away and that comes off. I can't talk about the rate. The rate is the rate is the rate. What I can tell you is about what we do as planners to plan ahead for that, for the use, to accommodate further growth. Moreover, if you look at building trends, which I have looked far more closely the last couple of months, if you go back, and I've tracked building permits literally since January of 1980 through September of 2024, by month, by year, so that's about 44 years, okay? The biggest burst of growth the city has ever experienced is from about 1985 to 86, 87, and I'm talking about 450 units, residential units, not building permits, residential units. And that began, I wish I bought the optic, I'll be happy to share that with you. That slope started to turn down and went down to about around 2001, 2002, 2003. It really dropped off. Since about 2003 to the present time, the number of building permits and the resultant number of units, other than the fact that we're going to get to these apartments that you mentioned in the downtown, Mr. Robert, it's been very, very flat. There are months that the building inspector's office hasn't issued any building permits for our single-family dwellings. It's really leveled off. But since about 2018, 2019, there have been these blips. What are those blips for? Renaissance Station North, 1 Wall Street, Sterling Loft on Mechanic Street, the elderly housing complex. There's probably another one off the top of my head that I can't recall. But please understand that was planned. And what do I mean by that? Including Mayor DeSimone going back 3 or 4 administrations. The plan has been, how do we revivify our downtown and develop our inner core so as to not necessarily take action to reduce development in the suburban areas, but by concentrating housing in the downtown and the urban core to relieve the pressure of cutting trees and extending infrastructure and waterway in other parts of the city. So that was planned to do that. Why? Every single time we get an application in my office as a planning director, whether it's for the planning board or the zoning board, for these multifamily developments in the core of the downtown, those applications aren't just reviewed by the planning board. We touch at least 10 different departments, including Courtney. We ask, do we have the capacity? Do we have the supply? Do we have the pressure? We meet with the fire chief. We meet with his staff, with Courtney's staff. And in every instance, we've never received anything that says, no, we don't have either sufficient supply or infrastructure. Why? Well, Mother Nature's been cooperative all that time. Aside from the fact that she's been planning, Courtney's been planning the systems upgrades that we've been implementing along the way. We are currently in the midst of preparing the city's new comprehensive plan. We're about a year into it. That's going to address a lot of these issues too. So I'd like to submit to you, Ms. Robbins, that we are planning a lot of these things. Unfortunately, and again, I'm going to go back to last September when we were, no pun intended, inundated with residents about flooding issues. It's something we can't control, but it's something we can plan for. So that's my answer. I hope, I'm not going to necessarily say I've convinced you, but I want to give you that perspective that we're not just sitting back and just seeing what one day rolls into the next day. It's a heavy lift to get a lot
I
of these.
understand that, but what I like to do is, I always like to see those numbers.
Sure.
I think they should be posted, I think they should be transparent, and I like to see what the pressure is, if there is any, on all this building. You said you went all the way back, and you were looking at the ups and downs and how much pressure could our systems handle,
Right.
if there was any. Where is that? Where is those reports? Are there anybody
Sure.
submitted those reports?
So the data's there. I just collected. It wasn't all of a sudden because of this. I've been doing that as the planner, so I could project what we need to do.
Okay.
So it isn't that because just this happened.
No, I understand
that I
that.
did that. So that data, again, I've been accumulating that every couple of months. Every time I get the monthly report from the building inspector's office, I update it as we can. So that's been going on for a long time.
I guess it needs to be more transparent, and you won't have to have a lot of
I didn't know people.
questions.
Sure, and again,
You know?
please understand, the data's there. Gary Erasure, the planning director, chose to review that data, so it isn't anything that I did and I just left it there. Of course, whatever I do is public record. Anyone wants to look at it, I'd be more than happy to share that with the trend line. But the other optic I want to talk with you about is also a single-family detached home or one family. Let me also stress this. I think the planning board, over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, has probably approved maybe 3 definitive subdivision plans, and one's under construction right now. So even the construction of one-family dwellings, subdivisions, has really tailed off. But if you compare the optics of a one-family dwelling versus, in terms of what it uses for water consumption, versus an apartment, one of the reasons why these administrations, along with Mayor DeSimone and previous administrations, are trying to concentrate housing in the downtown, because the usage of water is far less
good.
by a one-family unit than it is for a one-family detached dwelling. Why? Irrigation, pools, washing cars. One of the tenets that we're trying to advance in the downtown as part of the transit-oriented development project is a more walkable community.
Right.
All right, and what does that mean?
I've seen
right?
all that, yep.
Well, right, but see how it all kinds of comes together? It
Yes.
isn't just, political punchlines that I mean, there is a plan,
Well, I guess it comes out looking like a political punchline.
But it's not,
When
but-
we're in times like this.
Sure, but I wanna-
I think those things should be more transparent. The
Absolutely.
mayor,
Why not?
Showing it up to everybody who has
Sure.
all these concerns.
And maybe
putting
this
down
is
the
that-
rumors
this is that springboard for
everybody
that.
has.
So,
Actually, Doug, a lot of the information that you heard, it's online. People, they post on Facebook, but they don't go look at what's on the city website. So I'm happy to post Gary's Excel spreadsheet. Oh,
So that one-
Sorry, Jim. I'm
that-
happy to
that-
put Gary's personal Excel spreadsheet online if you're open to it.
so that apartment uses far less water. Of course, you're gonna say it's still using water. I get it.
Right.
But the plan was to, how do we reduce that consumption, yet plan for more capacity in the future? And again, rather than repeating everything, but all these other peripheral projects that we're working on isn't just something we just said, oh my God, like 3 weeks ago, well, we need to do something. Those are all in the works. So if it's a matter of, everything that we do is online. If it's something more that we need to do, have at it. That's perfectly fine.
Sure.
It's all public information. The data's there. I happen to tabulate it. I'd be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, we can post that. Courtney, did you want to add to Doug before we move to the next question? Are you good?
My second half?
Yeah.
Oh, you have a number 2? Okay, sorry.
The only thing I want to mention, and I'll just add to what Gary said about apartments, we do track water use per billing district, and what we see in our districts that are out in like the more suburban or country-like areas of the city, compared to what we see in the downtown area. The downtown area it's a lot of tenements, it's a lot of single families with small yards, things like that. And basically, the winter use for those areas of the city looks almost identical as it does in the summer. What we see in the other areas going out into the country with the lawns, some of those neighborhoods, we see water use triple or more. So again, it does get right back into lawns. I'm not the planner and I'm not the mayor. But as development goes, my opinion is if you need somewhere for folks to live, the best place and the best use of water is to put them all in one place, in apartments like the downtown.
Concentrate then.
Thank you, Courtney.
I mean, I'd rather have dirt in front of my house, but be able to take a shower. So,
Agreed.
I mean, I don't know what
Oh,
everybody
all
else
of us,
likes.
yeah.
but-
Second that, yeah.
The other thing is rumors.
Yes, sir.
Who do we sell our water to? And the people that we do sell, if we do sell our water to, do they have the same restrictions as us?
I
So-
can answer. Oh, I can answer that.
Go around.
We have about 350 direct customers in North Attleboro, 59 in Mansfield, and 3 properties in Norton, and they are on the same restrictions as us.
Okay.
But those are all subject to intermunicipal agreements, so that isn't just a developer.
What does that mean?
Sure,
Means
so
we have
a
a contractual
developer,
relationship with them.
Well,
a
I'm like-
developer or homeowner can't just arbitrarily tie from another community into Attleboro. Any of those connections have to be subject to an approved agreement between the town and the city.
Okay.
And then they could connect. If the city chooses not to allow a connection, then they can't tie in.
Is as living in a neighborhood plat, as I do, you hear rumors, people talk, and then the rumors start growing. And, the last I heard is, we sell to Mansfield, we sell to Foxborough, we sell to Norton, we sell to North Attleboro, and they don't have any restrictions. Or the restrictions is, I get to water my lawn every other day, and you can't. So.
And no, it's about 400 customers. The available lots in Mansfield and Norton, Norton's been built out for basically as soon as we did the agreement. Mansfield's been built out for years. North Attleboro needs to seek approval and basically to edit the IMA with us at any time they want to tie in.
And just
anything.
following up on my last question, thank you, is being on a fixed income, all these tie-ins, all these dredging things that we're doing and
It's a
stuff.
cost, yeah.
How much more of taxes am I going to be paying?
We,
I mean,
look, I
there's
don't know
got
what
to be
to
a
tell you,
cost.
Doug. It
I mean,
costs money to improve our interest. I don't know. You tell me, how do we do it? How do I dredge at no cost to the city? I don't know how that's possible. If there's grants out there, although dredging is not something that I know the federal government doesn't support dredging. So I don't know what monies are out
just
there.
not the
but-
dredging, there's the tie-ins to Pawtucket and the different places. Is that going to cost more money?
Yeah, it's going to cost us $35,000 a month to use that 1 million gallons a day.
Do we have any money
Yes.
in the kitty?
We have some.
Yes,
How much money we have in the kitty?
was it 1.2?
Yeah, we're 1.9. Yeah. Look. The longer this goes, not enough.
Right.
I'm not going to lie. This is going to be an
Oh, I
expensive
know, but
proposition.
I just want to know what my apples and
Yeah, no,
gonna be for
the longer
next
this
year.
goes, it's definitely gonna cost us money, as will some of the improvements that are needed. If anybody here knows another way to do it, I'm open to it, but there is cost involved with dredging and with doing some of the things that we need to do. Sorry, I think I'm telling you what you already know. but-
no,
Yeah.
but I have some ideas.
Well,
I'm not gonna
and
give 'em
you
here
know, and I
because
want
it's
to, I want to
gonna-
appreciate your point for clearing
Yep.
up rumors. If you have questions, folks, please come to the source. Social media is not where you're going to get the
No.
information. There's your water superintendent. There's your city planner. I answer emails. I return phone calls. I deliver the truth. I'll take the hits that come with it, but you can please come to get good information. So I appreciate your point, Doug, for trying to knock down some of the rumors that are out there.
Thank you for your time.
So thank you.
Did I start the ball going?
Hello, good
Hello.
evening. Diane Sawyer, 136 Curtis Ave. Last week, I wrote a guest essay in regards to water and construction and everything that's happening in Attleboro. I hope you all have had a chance to read it. I wasn't even going to come in and talk because I was sitting in the parking lot, but then Gary brought up the aquifer. So I came in, and Gary, honestly, great guy. You ever need any info, reach out to him. He will tell you the truth, same as Kathleen.
37 years with the city, Gary
Yes.
has been, so, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Diane, I appreciate that.
No problem, no problem. I speak the truth. And so my truth that I'm speaking here right now, and I apologize because I'm nervous, is that I don't understand how the city keeps shooting itself in the foot. Because next week, on the 19th, Cardi's Furniture is seeking to rezone Attleboro's largest aquifer from business to residential, with the intention of building 23 or so new houses, duplex, etc. In addition to this, South Attleboro currently has about 300 duplexes, homes, and etc. being built in Attleboro. Along this 300 and so is an apartment building, about 340. Well, actually, in total, it's 412 in total, minus one neighborhood I stumbled across who I don't know how many homes are going to be built because they haven't put the foundations in yet. And I haven't asked Gary yet what it was proposed for. But we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and people need to wake up and pay attention. Water is first. And then the land and the flooding, these builders are building closer and closer to wetlands. One of my friends in South Attleboro had $18,000 worth of damage. What happens if we do allow Cardi's to rezone this? First of all, there goes our chance at the aquifer, the groundwater, because now they're going to demand to build on it.
So let me stop you. That's not the trick. That's
No,
not the case.
it's not true.
Municipalities, by being a municipality, don't happen to own land that there happens to be an aquifer, right? We just, when a municipality was incorporated or established in 1694 or incorporated in 1888, by doing so, didn't just naturally own land where there's an aquifer, right? We didn't own the city of Attleboro. We have to give great thanks, seriously, to our forefathers that had the foresight well over 100 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, to purchase real estate points north of Attleboro to secure our water rights back then. So to say that, Diane, of course you're entitled to your opinion, but please understand what the municipal council may or may not do with the rezoning is mutually exclusive and independent of if there is an aquifer, and let's say through this study that we're going to perform, identifies that. That doesn't mean because it's privately owned that we can't do anything. That's why I want to go back to my original premise. When a municipality is incorporated, established, it didn't just by the sake of being so own land where there happens to be aquifer. One had to go out and actually purchase that. So when that time comes, wherever those optics lay, in terms of where that aquifer or aquifers are, that we determine need to be, I hate to use the word seized, but acquired and made part of the city's surface water system as a setting, we will do so. So please understand the rezoning has nothing to do with that.
No, I understand that, but in the 2009 last open space and recreation plan, Saving Sweden Swamp was number 5, right along with Highland Park and, oh, God forbid me, the Locust Valley.
Yeah.
It's like, but nothing's been done. And now it's 20 years, and now we're facing the chance of it being sold, and now having to go through the legal means and the legal costs to take it from them.
But Sweden Swamp is already privately owned, and it may change hands from one private owner to another. It still is. But, when you mentioned that Sweden Swamp is ranked number 5 in the 09 open space plan, I've gone back to the 1978 plan. It's in the 1978 plan. As each plan succeeds, the administration that's in office at the time can choose to pursue grants, which we've done. We've bought well over 1,000 acres. We've probably spent millions, seriously, millions on open space acquisition and gotten grants for those. It's up to the administration in office at the time if whatever real estate they want to pursue. So while we may not have purchased Sweden Swamp, the city has purchased other open space throughout the city, hundreds and hundreds of acres, well over, I want to say close to about 1,500 acres of open space. So again, it's not so much that it's in the 09 report, it's in the 1978 report. It's just there are other opportunities that come along that the city chooses to review one opportunity to another and then choose to pursue. For example, when we purchased the 86 acres on Handy Street, the 54 acres on Wilmouth Street, the 110 acre conservation restriction off La Salette, the 54 acres that we purchased just south of Manchester Reservoir on was it Phillips?
Phillips.
Right, the Phillips property. So as opportunities present themselves, we take advantage of that and pursue it. Doesn't minimize Sweden Swamp, it's still there.
Well,
But there's
It's
an
going to
opportunity
be for
cost.
sale, so I hope
Sure.
Attleboro's interested in buying it for the opportunity for water for all of us.
Sure.
Diana,
Because,
I'm sorry.
because I know, I've seen the plans. If anyone would like them, I'd be happy to email them, but so would Gary. So just, it's just gotten to the sickening point where, like, I'm in the school committee too, and certain grade levels are full, and we are shipping from students from one school to another because we don't have particular room in certain class sizes. I'm sorry, I'm just like, I'm nervous, but, and I'm much better in writing.
Take your time. Take your time.
Than speaking, because I tend to ramble. But it's like I said, basically, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. It's been out there. People have made a stink about all these other things and got it saved. Well, people make the stink. This is our water. It's like they're still building, and they're gonna build.
Diane,
Thank you.
respectfully, I just want to defend, if you will, my predecessors and all the people who have been working long and hard for the city. We aren't shooting ourselves in the foot. There's a lot of thoughtful people. There's a lot of planning that goes into this. I know that the issue is particularly sensitive to you because you abut the Cardy's property, and so I respect and appreciate your opinion, but I take a little issue that we don't know what we're doing. This isn't the gang that can't shoot straight. These are intelligent, hardworking people, and the problem is big. It's a long time coming. It's going to be a long time solving. But we are getting there, and I assure you, we can't pivot fast enough for this issue. It's just not possible. It's going to take us time. Do I wish we were in a different place? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But I can only deal with where we are right now, and I'm trying to get us through the moment and looking forward.
And Kathleen, I love you. I voted for you. I supported you. Anyone knows that I did
Yes,
that. But and this is not your problem, and I'm sorry you're having to deal with it. But no planning on Gary. I mean, we're an old New England town, and as the fire department told the city council, certain fire trucks can't get through the east side. Just the way the streets are laid out. It's just the way Attleboro's laid out. We have to have more thoughtful planning going forward, not just going to rezone with the intention of building without any other we need a master plan. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dee.
Oh, just one last comment, and this isn't to Diane, it's for everybody. Diane mentioned the development in Route 1A, 340 units. Actually, it's 306. That was the second largest proposed development in the city of Attleboro since I've had the tenure as city planner since 1986. In 1986, we had a proposed development for 640 units on what was then, still Locust Valley. Never passed, okay? This project that, Diane, I'm glad you brought up, thank you, Diane, that was approved about 2 years ago, was for 306 units, second largest development in Attleboro in the last 40 years. And I'm not going to ask anyone in this audience, unless you want to raise your hand, who's from South Attleboro. Okay, folks, I'm going to say, if you look at the record, I bet there wasn't more than a half dozen people that came to speak in opposition at public hearings. And it was the type of project that required permit from the planning board, permit from the Conservation Commission, and permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, I will tell you, I don't attend the Conservation Commission hearings, but every Thursday morning after such a meeting, I always consult with my staff to see what happened the night before and what I could share with the Zoning Board and Planning Board, because I attend the Planning Board and Zoning Board meetings. So I could tell you categorically that I attended all the public hearings for the Zoning Board and Planning Board, and I would be hard-pressed to tell you that I bet there weren't more than 6 residents to come and speak in opposition for the second largest proposed development in the city of Attleboro. So I share that with you, not as a counterpoint, but also, if these are thoughts that you're concerned about, you have to make yourself more apparent at public hearings and to express your opinions. So if anything, I'm not here to pontificate or anything, but maybe to empower you that when you get that notice in the mail next time, even if you don't want to speak, but sometimes what the board does, just like this, I'm going to guess there are about 75 people here. I just counted about 8 per row, 7 rows, 56, and I'm throwing another 20 out there. What the board would do, can I please see a show of hands? I or my staff literally stands up, count every single hand, and for the record, we would say there were 35 people in opposition. So you don't have to speak. If you want to, fantastic. But let me tell you that those public notices go out not because, of course, it's statutorily required, but it's very serious. We're very serious. So if people don't come and share their opinion to the board, we still do our due diligence. I remember one of the zoning board members challenging me for a few projects in the downtown. Gary, do we have the water capacity? My immediate knee-jerk reaction was yes, but what did I do? I went through the file and I looked up reports from municipal departments, and we have sufficient capacity. Gary or board, the only thing we ask is to make sure that during construction, they adhere to the construction specifications, say, of the water department or the sewer department or things to that effect. So all I implore to you is that when you get that notice, either call the office, we're friendly, or come to the meeting. And I think over time, when you come to the meetings, you'll find a friendliness of the boards. You might feel a little more empowered or confident to get up. I'm not assuming that no one has confidence, but I'm just saying it does get intimidating sometimes to express your opinion. But no one spoke, 6 people for a 300, I get it. That's a lot of units. But no one spoke in opposition. Well, not more than 6 people spoke in opposition. And by the time we got through the public hearing process, no one was showing up. We still did our due diligence. We didn't say, well, there's no one coming here, let's close it. We still went through all the optics. Did we get everything in place? Did you double check with the fire chief? Did you double check with Public Works, with water, wastewater? Yep. We still went through all that. So I want to tell you that we go through that with a very fine-tooth comb, and things don't get through the regulatory process casually. I mean, I think we do a really, really good job.
Thank you,
and I really do. I don't mean to be self...
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I should say that for the boards,
In the
not
interest
me,
of
the
time, and it's
boards.
getting warm in here, I just want to,
Well,
and respectfully, I want to emphasize again, Diane, I appreciate your concerns, but you cannot take away from the fact that we are in a drought with historic level, I mean,
get
that
that.
is an issue.
I
So
get that,
think of us
but-
what you will, but look at the context, all right, in which we
And-
find ourselves.
and one quick
Both things
thing.
may be true.
Yeah, one quick thing, and one thing that Kathleen said the other day, more people need to be active and involved. Just like
Always.
Gary said, I was one of the 2 people that participated in the 6 in opposition, my spouse and me, because we knew what it was going to do to South Attleboro. And I personally, Kathleen, would love to see the city send a blast out when there's public hearings so that more people would be aware, because something in South Attleboro does affect Attleboro and Pawtucket, and what, we can go on because
course, yeah.
that's the 10-mile river. But thank you
No,
so
thank you,
much.
Diane. And getting to people is a challenge as well, right? Some folks are on social media, some folks read the Chronicles, some
Yeah.
folks do neither. So reaching people, and while I'm here, I should give a plug for our alert notification system. So we do send out alerts, information, events, spread the word, because getting the message out is a challenge. For good news and bad, we need to let people know. We want to let people know. We don't work in the dark. So sign up and tell your friends to sign up for all the alert notifications. Thank you, Dee. Hello.
Hello. April San Antonio.
Hi, April.
I'll be quick because I know there's a lot of people that want to talk. Quick question. Thank you for all that you're doing. It is a historic drought. There's climate change, so this is probably the first of, or the second of many
We're going to
serious
see
water
swings,
issues.
right? Yep.
Exactly. So I guess my question is around being proactive. So let's assume that we get lots of water and there's no restriction by winter or spring. Have you been talking about changing the requirements? Because I know, like, putting restrictions in earlier and faster in the spring so that we're not like going to odd even at the beginning, or going to something really restrictive very early on in the season, just to prepare for potential droughts, because they're going to get more and more
No,
frequent.
I think you're right, April. We're going to see swings. We're going to get floods,
Yep.
and then we're going to get droughts. The annual restrictions go into place May 1, right?
Yeah, annual restrictions are May 1st through September 30th. They're basically designed to handle the watering season. A typical year, this year is a huge exception, of course, but a typical year, basically, we picked 9 to 5 with no outdoor watering. It's easy to follow. Everybody falls on the same day. It's easier for enforcement. And honestly, it's the times of day that nobody should be watering anyway.
Right.
I mean, really, it's
That's the
wasteful. It
baseline.
saves money for the resident to water outside those hours. You know, going forward, and actually, we did put a lot of thought into this in the spring, actually, before we even went further on the restrictions of, you know, clearly defining the levels of restrictions so that we have more steps to go to. We kind of skipped over level 2 this year
Yes,
because the rain just all of a sudden shut off. And again, as the mayor said, a lot of this is on the website as well, but we do have the different levels. We have the 9 to 5. And then we go to basically handheld only, and that was skipped this year, and then it goes to full outdoor, and then it goes to where we are now.
If I may, so April, I appreciate your point, and we can change we can do all that. We need to change minds.
True.
Right, we need to change minds, and I know it sounds silly and corny, but really I'm hoping that people start rethinking their use of water and not taking it for granted. And it may be that we up the penalties and revisit our, you know, our enforcement procedures, right? Because the one way to get people's attention is to hit them in the pocketbook. So
Right.
I can have that conversation with Courtney and the police chief as well, because there's a lot of repeat offenders is what we find. Courtney can check water use. We know, you know what I mean, we know where these people are, so enforcement will be high on the agenda next year. If not restriction changes, enforcement changes, so.
Yeah, both. Yeah, that sounds good.
And moreover, in projects that
sense.
we approve too, the pendulum has swung considerably where the boards require for landscaping plans more drought resistance vegetation. Instead of having irrigation systems for trees, lots of times you'll see those bags at the base, those water bags on trees, so it doesn't rely on the irrigation system. All those little steps, and there are bigger steps that are coming down the line. I've had numerous conversations with the mayor about amendments to the zoning ordinance and on design elements and subdivision regulations. I speak with the sustainability committee as often as I can to keep them abreast of what we're doing and trading ideas with them that we'd like to weave into the regulations. So those are coming down the line too. It's part of this proactiveness, again, our ability to be resilient, adapting to the inevitability of climate change. I mean, some people still think it's a figment of one's imagination, but again, something short-term like this, you can't say it's climate change, but given that we had flooding last year, but look at the craziness. It's so we're trying as best as we can right now, and plus because a lot of people are xenophobic. They don't want change right away either. So we got to kind of implement this gradually, but we are doing that.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
I'm William Lamb. I live at 18 Icarus Lane, or Icarus, whatever way you want to call it. I followed the rules as soon as we were told no watering. Hose went away, the whole 9 yards. Out of sight of almost being caught by my neighbors peeing outside so that I don't flush and all that stuff. Me and my dog do that.
I'm not advocating for that. Because if we get there,
My dog and I do this on a regular basis, as you know, but that's the thing. My question is probably to you, ma'am, and I don't want to put you on the thing, but do you have any statistics of how many offenders you've had, verbal warnings, fines you've put in, because I lost my lawn, I love my lawn, but I follow the rules. And when you go by and see somebody's yard all burned up and the next yard's nice and green, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what's going on. What are we doing about that? Because I believe we need the water like everybody else, but maybe the fines aren't enough or what's going on. But do you have any stats on how many people you've written the warnings to, given fines to?
As soon as you get into fines, it does go to the police department, and unfortunately, we don't have the chief here tonight.
Well, I'm not trying to put anybody in the block, but it just,
I'm writing it down.
outside of me going by with a golf club and knocking off sprinklers on my way by, and then getting locked up, but.
We won't tell.
I understand.
Appreciate the zeal, though, my friend.
I spent 35 years in law enforcement, and my town had no water, and they wanted us to ride around and tell everybody, and if we have to do it, we all should do it.
I agree. We are all in this together, and I'm hearing clearly.
Yeah. But are there any stats on that or at all, or?
That would be with the police
I
department.
will reach out. I wrote it down. I can reach out and get the numbers, and we can.
Because if you need my help, I'll shut their water off. I'm available. Yeah, I'm available. I'm retired and I can go forward and do this, but. Yeah, but it's just that part really just bothers me. I had to say it because I've lost my lawn. I love my lawn, And
Can I tell you something? Though? Some people you can find them. Sorry, Jim. Some people you find them, they're still going to keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
If they're particularly if they have the means, it's just fine. It's well, you should have to talk to the police chief. Okay, I'm not advocating for that either, but
no,
I'm just
understand.
saying that for some people,
we need it for
they'll pay the
drinking.
fine.
That's more
Yeah.
important. Firefighting.
Agreed. So we
et
might
cetera.
have
You
to
know,
up the
I was
fines
in
as
law
well.
Enforcement,
Yep.
worked with the fire department. I understand that,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
just burns.
It's galling.
Yeah.
It's galling. I agree with you.
So if I do get locked up for being in the bushes, you guys will help me, right?
I don't want that. I don't know. You have to talk to the chief about that one, Bill. I don't know.
All right, but are we able to get those stats at some point or something? Or?
Yeah,
I
we
can
can,
reach
we
out to
can
the police
definitely
chief.
get
Yep.
them.
I'm just not trying to put you on the spot, but it just bothers me
No,
too that.
give me a day or two. I'll have the police chief put them together. And we can put them on the Courtney's webpage.
Okay, thank
You
you.
have my word.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
All right.
So it'll be a tough one to follow.
Yep.
I better not catch him peeing on my lawn tonight. That's all I can say. My name is Kevin Rushlow. I live in South Attleboro. I've lived in my home for 48 years. So, and we are definitely in a very unique situation now. My concern or more my frustration is in those 48 years, I don't have any stats, but I would say I could probably count on two hands the years that we didn't have some type of water ban in the city of Attleboro. So you've talked about what we're looking to do, and we talked about the building, and we all got that on our mind. We read the article in the paper, you know, the building that's going on and whatnot, and I don't know all the numbers like the other young lady. She was pretty well prepared, but the thing is, and you folks can't answer this, and I'm not saying any of you folks are incompetent by any means,
Thank you for that.
but why in the world do we wait until we're in this type of a situation, and you said you've been working on it for a few years, before we do something? We have an issue in Attleboro. I know. I've lived in Attleboro my whole life, but I've been in my home for 48 years. It's an ongoing issue. Whether we have tons of rain, which we had in the spring and the fall last year, and the winter and spring, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know where all that water went. I did take a picture of the chart. I'd like to analyze that a little bit to find out where we level off when we were way up here and now we're way down there. Where does it level off? Where was the water runoff? But again, just my frustration. I don't want to ramble on because we've been here a long time and it is very warm. I'd like to take some of
yes,
this,
agreed.
take some of this heat, bring it back to my house. But
Kevin, if I may, just to address your first point, and the water superintendent will agree. So we have a permit to use water through the state, right? Our water permit. And the state requires us, in turn for the privilege, if you will, the ability to use the water, we have to put restrictions in place. That's part of the water permit that we've been getting. I don't know how long the state's been requiring that, Courtney, the annual restriction.
I believe it was 2020 was the renewal.
I was
So the
going
restrictions
to
that
say
Kevin's
3
talking
years.
about before, that was,
Water Management Act that came into place. I'd
Yes.
say that was probably, geez, I think that was when Mayor Shane was in office, probably late 1980s.
so
No,
that,
When the wa-
no.
So I'm just saying.
No, it
the wa-
wasn't. It's been like 3 or 4 years that the state has mandated
yes,
the May 1st to
Yes, that's
September
true.
30th.
that is exactly true.
That prior to that, I had never heard of a state mandate. Now, I'm probably one of 6 people that still get the Sun Chronicle. But I get the Sun Chronicle. I read it cover to cover. It doesn't take me long because it's such a small paper now. But so the mandate, at least in I believe, has been minimally 4 years, maybe 5, and I don't even think
That's
it's
what
been
you
that
said,
much.
2020 about.
But anyways, and it's like I say again, I'm repeating myself, and you people don't want to hear it anymore. And I'm frustrated, probably like everyone else in this room. Tonight's a different situation. We're in an emergency
Yes, sir.
situation. My lawn is gone. I love my lawn. I have cars, and you ask any of my neighbors, and a couple of them in this room, I used to be out washing my car once, twice a week. I haven't washed my car once this summer. It's killing me. Huh? Twice a day. Yeah, okay, there you go. That's one of my crazy neighbors. Anyways, but anyways, the thing is, it's been going on, and again, just repeat myself, we can't go back and fix yesterday, but we certainly can fix tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
And we need to. And
Agreed.
forget the drought, because we know we had it, and we're gonna deal with it, but we gotta put a plan in place for all the new construction and for the existing construction, so we can use our water. It is a precious commodity, I agree. Other communities, area communities, don't have the issues that Attleboro has. And I'm not talking this year, last year, the year before, I'm talking over the course of the last 48 years that I've seen. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Kevin. And just to emphasize, so we are increasing capacity. We're going to access some wells again to increase the water supply. So that is on the agenda and has been. Hello.
Hi, I'm Lisa McDonnell. I live on Two Potter House Road. I just want to understand, I grew up in a rural part of Connecticut where we all had wells.
Yeah.
What made the town shift from wells to surface water? Do the wells give out after a while?
That's a very good question, and it predates, Gary might be the only one who has a shot at knowing, and any folks who may remember back in the 80s why I think it was a financial decision, Lisa, but
So
I don't know.
I want to say about circa 1991, 1992, there was a consent order from DEP to the city about building a water treatment plant. It's 30 years ago. I'm going to say, because I remember it was right after the Shang administration to the Robbins administration. I know I'm dating myself when I say that, but I want to say it probably started around 91 with Mayor Shang, and it definitely was something that Mayor Robbins took on when she took office. I think it was in 92, and we did get a consent decree from the state that compelled us to build a water treatment plant. I don't recall, I don't think I was the planner at the time, doesn't mean I don't know the history. I should know the history. I don't know off the top of my head when the wells were decommissioned. But I do recall that I think it was around 1992-ish, 1993, 1991, where we shifted toward a surface water, and that's when we built Orr's Pond with that deep flow pipe that goes, 20 feet, I think, down or something for the inflow or something?
Yeah, the intake's 25 feet down.
Yeah, all right, 25 feet. So I want to say it goes back to about at least 1992. It's a little blurry to me prior to that, but I know the wells were decommissioned. I know Bungie River for sure. Those were decommissioned.
I mean, were these wells that you had large enough to supply the whole city?
I don't know the history of that. I'll be honest, I don't know. We
I'd
could
have to
certainly
look
look it up and
No,
get an
It's
answer.
been
I
on
just
my
don't-
mind, because
I
I
was
had
just
the
trying to
same
understand.
question. And I meant to do a Google search at the Chronicles archives to see what I could find out, but yeah, I
was just
do
curious.
understand that the state said get a treatment plant, and I think the city just made the decision. Because keep in mind, it's not just the well, right? You need the works to pump the water up, and then you got to get the water to where it would be. So there was a cost involved. So I think they made a decision, dare I say, to just go surface water, which in retrospect, in the world we're in today, I agree with you. But if I get a chance, Lisa, I wanted to go through the Chronicles archives to see if I could find anything in the paper about that. So I
Thank you.
appreciate your question.
Any idea why they required a consent? What was wrong with that water in the well that they decided?
So I don't know whether there's a logical correlation between decommissioning the wells and why we went to a surface water. We'd have to review the decree again, please. It's at least 30 years ago. It's 32 years ago, maybe 35 years ago. I just honestly don't know off the top of my head, verbatim. If I did, that'd be strange. What a decree.
Going back those wells, you better find out.
Well, of course. Yeah, of course. We'd have to, before you step forward, you kind of have to understand, your historic of your water sources and how to move forward. But I honestly don't know off the top of my head what compelled that consent decree.
Yeah, I had the same question, right? Because today you're like, what? But yeah, we'll see if we can find out what happened, but we're definitely bringing some back online because in the future you're going to need both. You need to go low and you need to help for rain. So, hello.
Hi, my name is Ann Fanning.
Hi, Ann.
And I was wondering, for the $35,000 a week to connect to Pawtucket, how much water we get out of that?
1 million gallons a day.
A million a day.
For a month.
So it's almost $2 million a year, 1.82 it says here, a year if the emergency lasts that long.
Well, let's hope not, but
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, so
that's the agreement.
What would the cost be from Mansfield to get if we have to connect to them, to get the 250,000
Yep.
or 500,000 gallons a day?
We're meeting with them tomorrow. We haven't heard a number yet, but
We
we're
have
meeting
not
with
heard a number
Mansfield
yet.
tomorrow.
And I did see you on television on Channel 5.
Yep.
Being interviewed.
This afternoon.
It was on tonight before I came.
Oh, okay.
And the governor did say she was going to reach out, or you could reach out to them
Yeah.
to see what she can do for us.
Well, I did reach out, so they can't really help us in the situation we're in right now, but they're on alert. Chief's been working with MEMA too, the Massachusetts Emergency so they're aware of our situation, but they don't have enough. It's not like they have enough.
Money to do
Well,
the things that we
maybe
need to
money
do.
there too, but they're aware of it. We're gonna see how things go, but they're aware of the situation. They can offer help. They can't give us the one thing that we do need, which is rain.
Water.
But they're here to serve and support. Chief, do you want anything about the MEMA?
Yeah, I'll just say that MEMA, much like FEMA, doesn't usually step in until there actually is an emergency. So as Courtney had said early on,
Yes.
we're not really at the state of emergency. One of the questions I had asked Courtney today was how much reserve water we have. You know, how if we didn't have any interconnections and we didn't have any rain,
Yes.
how long do we have water? And I don't want to put Courtney on the spot, but I know that it was 2 to 3 months, I think, a fair assessment. So there is no emergency. That's why FEMA and MEMA don't step in. The way they act, and this is unfortunately the way government works today. Somebody earlier had asked why things take so long. When I first became fire chief, I was shocked at how the government works. It's a shocking way of living when you actually go through it. When you're not in that world, you can get things fixed very easily. It's not that case for us. But in the federal government and the state government, when there is an emergency and there's a declaration, it's after the emergency that we can typically get reimbursed. So the first part for us is, which all of these people are working on, what we can do to hopefully be more resilient, be more prepared. We've had conversations offline about what we would do if the unthinkable happened and we have no more water. We're having those conversations. Now, I don't anticipate that because I find it unlikely that we're going to go 3 months without rain or
Yes.
snow.
Yes.
But we're planning. That's the contingency we're working on. Worst case scenario. So I think it should give everybody a little bit of peace of mind in a bad situation, knowing that worst case scenario, we don't get there for several months. And we're doing all of these things with the interconnection that the mayor and Courtney are working on, and those things, I think will put us in a place that we still have our challenges, So all of the other things everybody's talked about, we need to do
Yes.
so that 6 months from now, next summer, that we're not having this
We're not here,
conversation.
yeah.
And I
So
will say, just to give kudos to the mayor, one thing that I enjoy working with her is I can actually disagree with her. And when I do, she's a great listener. She's a great resource for the city, as is other people in the room. But when you actually have a mayor that allows people, I can speak my mind and tell her the truth that I have been hired to tell people. And I don't tell her anything publicly that I don't tell her behind closed doors. We have that good working relationship. And I can say this is a challenging situation, but under her leadership, we're going to be okay. We're in a good spot. She's a very compassionate, caring person. I consider her, honestly, she's a friend, which is surprising to me to actually say that. But she is a really strong asset for the city. She picks good people to do their jobs. So we're going to be okay. She
Thank
sleeps
you,
less than
Chief.
I do.
Thank you. That's very kind, very kind. So just two quick things. I literally was on the phone with MEMA today because if it's any consolation, I'm not sleeping. In case you can't tell, this is keeping me up. I feel the weight of the responsibility very much. Just talked to MEMA today. I wanted to be on their radar, and Chief has been talking to them already, so they're there. But to Chief's point, they don't do anything until you're in it. You know what I mean? But we are on their radar, please know, right? So that has already happened. I literally just talked to someone at MEMA today.
I just have one last
Hope we
question.
don't get there, though. Yeah.
Is it safe to drink the water? Because I drink the city water.
It is safe to drink the water. As I mentioned earlier, we did start the Wading River plant.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so it has had manganese issues and PFAS issues in the past. For those of you with infants,
it
if
still?
you're, yeah, if you're formula feeding babies and things like that, I would recommend bottled water for
How
now.
high is the level of the manganese?
The last we saw was was before we went online, and it was 0.2, which meets regs. But it's borderline, so I would be careful with infants. For healthy adults, it's fine.
Uh-huh.
For PFAS, we have sampling for that we're waiting to come back. And I expect the results end of next week, beginning of next, and that will be posted right to the website through the alert system as well. PFAS at the levels we're seeing, again, it's a long-term exposure concern. So you can choose to drink it, you can choose not to. I would drink the water at Wading River right now. If you choose not to, we do still have the filling station available at West Street.
Thank you, Courtney. And our health agents, there's a flyer on the table, Lisa, that talks specifically about manganese. And that's why Dr. Quinn is here as well. So if manganese is a concern, I think Courtney hit the high points, which is one, infants should not be drinking it. But the flyer over there from the health agent says at this point, it's fine. It's not at a level that should be concerning to anybody who's not a baby and not otherwise vulnerable. Is that accurate, Dr. Quinn?
Yeah, just to be sure, you can go with the bottled water.
Yeah, if you're particularly...
On the formula
Yeah.
mixing, yeah.
Yep.
And that's what that indicates.
I know they just raised the price of the water.
Yeah.
Is it going to be, is the $35,000 a week going to affect what we
The
pay?
rate? You know, that's a very good question. I'm not intending it to, but you know what's interesting? When you lose less water, it becomes more expensive, you know what I mean? So that's a problem. Courtney's department, the revenues come from the rate.
I saw Mason.
And now use is down, which means her income's down. So we got ourselves a little situation here. But I will say in the short term, we're not thinking about rate increase. The longer this goes, that's a conversation because again, with lower use, her income's down.
Well, when I
Which
saw
means
the
we don't
one-
have money to do the things we need to do. We got ourselves a little
I
situation.
saw that end result of 1.82 million a year if it continues this way.
Oh,
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I hope not to use the interconnection for a year. I really hope that's not the case, but it's going to be expensive. I can't lie, and it's going to cost us money. The longer it goes, the more it's going to cost us. I don't know how else I could say that. You know?
Okay,
But
thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Hello.
Mason Bordeaux. I had what I think is probably a quick question, which is just around the interconnections with other cities. Is that water coming in, I don't know if this is the proper terminology, but raw from the untreated sources, or is it coming in already treated by those towns?
Good question.
All of our existing interconnections, it's all finished treated water.
Okay. And would that also include Pawtucket?
That includes Pawtucket. Actually, once that's up and running with their first customer right at their plant, we can see the plant from there.
Okay. Then I guess there's one other follow-up, and that would be, being another state, I assume they may have different regulations in Rhode Island for water quality versus Massachusetts?
They actually do. We still have to treat it like a Massachusetts connection, no matter where the water's coming from, so it has to meet mass regs. There is sampling we have to do. Actually, that's not even required in Rhode Island before we bring it online.
Okay.
And all that, all that will be done before it's brought online.
Okay, well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason. And if Courtney didn't say it, you're hoping for early December for the interconnection.
Fingers crossed.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Melissa Lamb. I just had a question. Let's say it's worst case scenario and the drought continues for a few more months. I have seen online talk of stockpiling bottles of water. Is there a situation that you see where you might actually start cutting off water to people's homes during certain hours of the day or things like this?
We're not there yet.
Okay.
I mean, I live in that worst case scenario world. As I said, I'm not sleeping very much.
Yeah.
But to Chief and Courtney's point, we're good for 3 months, and in the meanwhile, we're hoping for rain. But
I'm just wondering what the next level of conservation is, because right now we're just relying on people to
Right, to
You know,
exercise indoor water conservation,
Facts.
that's a fair point.
And I'm sure some people are
Yeah.
and some people are not, so.
Yeah. We're gonna keep beating the drum about water conservation, and those of you who are here, please spread the word. If you're on social media, maybe make a comment tonight, like, look, I got the information from the source, this is legit, like, whatever, help us if you would. Because conservation is gonna buy us time till we get to that point, which I don't even know how that would look like, but, is it theoretically possible? Yeah. if
So
the
should
drought
we be?
continues for the next 3 months.
Should we be like buying bottles of water
I'm
and
using
storing them
it-
in the closet?
I
or-
use it in my house. We did buy some. We use it for drinking water and for cooking, just to take some pressure off the system. So full disclosure, I've got like 50 gallons in my basement.
Okay.
We use it for drinking and cooking and the pets. Still showering every other day, as you may tell. But I mean, I'm living it, people. But yeah, we did recommend use it for cooking and drinking. That will just help us preserve what we have.
Okay. Thank you.
So, yeah. Is that good? Do you guys want to add anything? Okay.
Hi, everyone. Michael Aguino. I got a quick question. We mentioned about how, use for lawns is the primary concern that we have,
Residential, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do we have any, I don't want to see our officers going to people's houses to, stop someone from watering their lawn. Do we have tools in place that actually show who are using water at what rates? We shouldn't need a police officer or someone looking at to see who's violating this. It's very easy to look at average usage, and if someone's exceeding that, then that needs to be addressed. Do we have tools like that currently in place that alleviate the strain on our officers rather than making house calls?
Actually, we do. There's residents out there that have irrigation meters, and for those of you that don't know, basically it's a sub-meter at your house that meters outdoor use. We've been going through the records internally, and actually there's a lot of them out there. Anybody that has had usage on the irrigation meter, basically it's an automatic fine with no officer having to go out. So we're looking at things like that. And again, it's not just the officers and the residents driving around and looking, it's us too. Every time I hit City Hall, I take a different route and cut through oddball neighborhoods and try to catch people. And yes, we actually do
Courtney,
this.
would pictures help if people took a picture of someone's lawn?
Oh, I have people send me pictures. I have
Or while the sprinkler's on, I should say.
Yes, I have a lovely resident that lives off of North Main Street who's found lots of people for us. I get pictures.
So pictures help
Yeah,
if you can.
probably about
Because what happens is by the time you
Mondays.
get there, the water's off.
Right.
Right.
And a picture proves it, and
So,
Your question was more
Yes.
technologically advanced. is
Ex-
rather
exactly.
having
Yeah.
mechanically out there, do we have the technology in the system to detect?
Well, we can tell use, but not purpose. So we
Correct.
got to be careful here, right? Because
But it's obvious. I
But
mean,
you
if you have a
gotta say-
family,
I
if you have a
know.
residential home,
Yeah,
you should
notwithstanding,
be
if
able.
you're only relegated to 200 gallons and you're at 220, whatever you're using the excess for, you're in excess.
that's a different question then. So I think, sir, what you're proposing is instead of banning water use, we put a limit on usage.
No, that's not. Nope. I'm talking about gross negligence. So to your point, right? If the average home for 4 people is
Uses-
200 gallons, for instance, I don't know what the number is,
Right.
and if someone's at 5x that value,
Sure.
I mean, we should have tools in place that.
We do, but that would require respectfully an amendment of the ordinances, right? Because that's not comprehended in our present system, right? That says you can't water your lawn. If I pull up and Courtney says you use a lot of water, I guess maybe because I happen to be an attorney, in my head I'm thinking, well, where are you going to prove?
So I guess the next thing then is, excuse me for 1 second.
Yes, sir.
The next thing is then, why aren't we using a scaling system where if you use 200 gallons, your price is $1. Once you
We've
cross
talked about
200,
that, yes.
why isn't it $4?
We've talked about that. Yes, we've had that. And I forget why we shut that down, because I asked you that question a couple of years ago. And the answer was people with money will just pay and use more water than you want them to anyway.
Well, I mean, if it exceeds the cost of us bringing in the water, and now we're making a net profit, then.
Yeah, but really you don't want them to use it even if they can afford it, is the
But if we're
point.
bringing it in, and
So we did. So the answer is we did,
Yes.
and we might have to revisit that.
Yeah,
So
we
we
did.
did, we did think about that.
Yeah.
And I understand your point is regardless of what the purpose is, irrigation, or you just want to run your faucet, once you meet a certain threshold, anything above that, of course, it would take an amendment to the ordinance, but I know your point is, so what? So we amend the
Fine,
ordinance,
I'm
right?
open to that
You can always
conversation. I
change the
want
law,
to be
right?
clear,
You can
we
always
can't
change
do
the
it
law, so-
presently. We'd have to amend the ordinances and establish a use schedule.
Yeah.
And if you go above it, the sad thing is, some people afford it. Again, it won't be an issue for a lot of these
Duly
people.
noted, though. Duly noted.
But your point's a good one. I just want to make clear that as it currently stands, we couldn't do that. We'd have to implement a water use schedule and let people know, if you go above X, here's the risk.
Yeah.
So a fair point. We did start the conversation, and some municipalities, I think, have.
Some
Right, but our concern was that if you're wealthy enough, it's just not an issue, and you're still wasting water on other things that we need. Like, you pay for it, but I don't get to use it. You know what I mean? So, anyway, but I appreciate your point, and we can certainly revisit that conversation, so.
I mean, we have to look at everything, right?
Yes, sir.
One other thing as well is, are there other things in place where we have some type of discounting system where if we buy new shower heads, new toilets, things like that, would help reduce?
Yeah, we don't have a mechanism in place in the city right now to give people money for that purpose, but I'm hoping to maybe buy some, like, the little faucet aerators, the little plastic.
Yeah.
Things like that make a difference. I was asking about, can we buy something, give them out? It's such a simple, inexpensive thing that makes a difference. So we don't have a mechanism in the city to kind of reward people, but we certainly can try to figure out ways to make things available for folks, but that's an expense. So we're gonna have to pay for it. It's just another expense if we put it out
Yep.
there, but yeah.
And that you're teetering in with the building code, so, we'd have to be conscious, understanding what the implications of an ordinance, whether or not that could supersede a building code. So we'd have to discuss that with the building commissioner too. But again, valid point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
we want to encourage people to think ahead, use low usage toilets and sinks and all that stuff. That's certainly the seeds. Again, it starts in here, right? It starts making people think about it and then value it. So that when you're buying a home, you ask that question.
Yep, and then one other thing, in regards to the quality of the water, the manganese in the water itself, right? So the water at the schools, is there a separate filtration system that we're using at the schools for our children or not?
No, those have been tested because there was a lead issue with some of the schools right at the source, the faucet. So those have been changed out, but that came up several years ago.
Right.
State was involved in that.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for their time.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I had a couple of things, real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
With regard to the testing, I believe I've served in the health department since 1999, and I believe it had something to do with the surface reservoir is an unusual circumstance from perspective of the state. That typically it's wells to with the confines of a tank and then dispersing it, or a water tower or what have you. So I think that might have something to do with it. The other thing is, I know people don't like to get bills, but I'll give you some perspective of what's going on in other parts of the state. Some of it's drought related, some of it's not. In some of the smaller communities, the woman mentioned from Connecticut originally, that there are some wells drying up at private homes, communities north of here, and they're spending thousands of dollars just for that individual well and that individual home to go deeper, because that's all they have for an option, is to just go deeper, a couple hundred more feet, and that costs thousands of dollars. So in that perspective, you're not having to do that here. Boards of health and health departments get involved when it's private wells as far as testing. With here in the city, you have DEP, overseeing things and giving you the direction on how to test and make sure it's safe drinking water. So you have oversight there that private well owners don't. There is a community in the western part of the state, Great Barrington, that gets all their water from a private company. So they're having issues with the quality of the water and not enough testing, which the private company decides the testing they're going to do. Yes, it's under some of the direction, but that's another area where you folks don't have to worry about it, because you can feel relieved that there is testing always going on, basically every day, every week. But and then we don't want to even get into the issues of places like Plymouth, where they want to dose some of the radioactive material from the power plant into the harbor. It doesn't really affect drinking water, but it's another point where a health department or board of health may become involved. But I just want to give you a little perspective of the state.
Thank you, Dr.
And,
Quinn.
testing,
Thank you. Sir.
The question is basically, I'm Chris. I'm living here for the 10 years. The reservoir of water, what we have here, those three of them, did they require some kind of maintenance? Like, are they going, they're not, like, do they need to go deep? Like, can you make it deeper down?
Yes, sir. Dredging.
Dredging,
Yep. So
okay.
it's dredging, and as the water superintendent said, we have 3 in line to be dredged, 3 of the smaller ones. I don't know if Courtney pointed out, but Manchester Reservoir, which is the big one near the
yeah.
highway.
Yep, yep.
Gary, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's ledge under there, which is rock, right? Which would require blasting. So that's a more expensive proposition. But that is also, you know, in line after the 3 that we increase capacity.
What about to make it bigger? Because I'm leaving behind that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going deeper. The
Yes.
dredging is going deeper, right, Courtney?
Yeah, that would actually depend on the reservoir. Looking at Hoppin Hill and Blake's, definitely deeper. Manchester, not only do we have ledge, we do have a couple species of concern up there. So going wider is a little bit of a problem there too. So deeper. And like, you know, for those of you that have driven by it lately, maybe getting the bottom more uniform would be an aim for Manchester, because, you know, the volume we have per foot at the top isn't the volume that we have per foot at the bottom, because we're seeing islands pop up. For Orr's Pond, what we're looking at is potentially going both directions. So we could get a lot of volume there. And I've mentioned this to the mayor, and it gets back into Orr's Pond being, you know, that part of our reservoir system. It gets more runoff and more river water than anywhere else in our entire system. So that one, expansion of that one is going to be huge, even though it's not the biggest one. And with the runoff, you know, if you look, and I mentioned this to you today, if you can gain, say, 100 million gallons at Orr's, with it being part of the river system, as it rains and the water's used, that will refill. Manchester, we would have to pump it back up there as storage. So that same volume increase is worth more at Orr's, believe it or not, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, so dredging is what you're looking for, and yes, we're doing it. And if anybody wants the presentation that Courtney made, that's all on her webpage called Water Sources. So if you want to really understand the way our water system works, it's really helpful. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hello, sir.
I'm Charlie Schusner. I live in Attleboro, been here 45 years. My question involves what the law says about development, building houses with septic systems, and not extending the sewer pipe to accommodate these new developments. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because it's economics. The user base for the sewer rate isn't increasing, I don't believe. I just wanted to get some input from the planner as to what the present law says. When you've got a development and we're going out here, what's the requirement that they tie into that sewer pipe?
Sure.
Because if you increase the user base,
Correct.
then that's better for the city,
Increases the.
and it
increases-
decreases the per unit cost.
Yeah.
So I know it's not related.
Well, no, it
but-
doesn't increase the unit cost, it increases the amount of revenue that you could reinvest and expand
Yeah.
it even more, so.
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, rather than, you know, and it spreads out the cost over a greater base. That's what I'm saying.
So, if a proposed development is within a certain distance of a sewer line, I don't know what that distance is, I'll be honest with you, I can always get that from the health agent.
Okay.
Let's call that distance X. One is compelled to tie into the sewer system. You can't tell the health agent, well, I want to go septic system, you have to tie in.
Okay.
If the project is outside a particular distance, whatever X is, then again, you're not guaranteed a septic system, right? You have to do your percolation test to determine, you know, what the sieve analysis gives you in terms of.
Sure, you mean per lot, you mean?
Per lot, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
So if one is within a particular distance, a certain distance of an existing sewer line, and that doesn't mean it goes right by your property, it could be
No,
away.
no.
You are compelled to extend the sewer line and bring it into your property. I just don't know what that distance is from your property, but you
Well,
are
the
required
sewer
to tie
line,
in.
the sewer line ends. So on the east
What's
side, of
that?
the sewer line does end. So on the east side of the city, the southeast side where there's been a lot of development, that's all septic systems.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that if they're not within a certain distance of that sewer line, they could put in septic, assuming under Title V, you pass the percolation test.
And that
But-
gets into the
Which is a
question
function
of-
number of bedrooms.
But then you get into this whole question that was brought up earlier, and there are some failed septic systems as a result of all the flooding several months ago. We saw some of the systems that were failed.
Yeah, because the
So
high
they couldn't
groundwater
drain,
table.
yeah.
Because of high groundwater table.
Yeah, I don't want to go into my background, but I was in the water quality business in the 70s. And at that time, this small agency we worked for did a study of 152 ponds on Cape Cod for SERPID, Southeastern Regional Planning and
the RPA,
Economic
sure.
Development District. And I worked for a PhD who was a physical chemist. He was a very intelligent guy. But the object there was to try and figure out whether the Cape could sustain more development. Now, this is 50 years ago already. I don't know if you would agree that it can or it can't. But when you go to the ponds in the summertime and you see green algae growing, that's a process called, that's algae, that's nutrients coming through, percolating underneath the sand. So that's why I tie in with the septic system issue. Because sooner or later, somebody's going to have to pay for a defective septic system. They don't last forever,
Right.
okay? And if the planning is that they're getting more and more towards where aquifers could be identified, that would just be a concern of mine, that's all. I appreciate your help. I
So
mean,
the extrapolation of that report was ultimately that it could not sustain it, and that's how the Cape Cod Commission precipitated, if you recall.
yeah, I
Right.
don't know whether it ever eventually limited growth.
Yeah, sure it did.
But the essential thing is that you had these little old shacks built around these little ponds. They were built for 2 people in the 40s. Then you get 10 or 15 people in there in the summertime, and you know what everybody's doing when they're drinking. So that was all part of the issue of, and that's the reason why they don't have a septic system there on the Cape. I mean, they can't probably afford to do it because of the
Yeah,
individual communities, you know.
fair point. Yep.
But I appreciate your help. I appreciate your effort on the behalf of the
Thank you, sir.
citizens.
Thank you, sir. Yep.
It's just my effort is economic.
Yeah, no, and I didn't
If we
think of
can
asking.
increase the
yeah.
users, then it decreases the cost.
I didn't think of bringing the wastewater superintendent
No,
here.
no,
Okay.
no.
So if you have
that-
questions, Tom Hayes, I'm sure he could be happy to tell you. Tom's knows
Well,
all about wastewater.
I was in the water quality business. I worked in Attleboro here at Kemet,
Ah.
which
Sure.
is now, and I know how much water we used.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was on the corner of School and O'Neill Boulevard, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, O'Neill Boulevard, the tennis court that became, and then now it's owned by the Japanese. But we used a lot of water.
Ah, yeah, we do. Thank you, sir. We'll wrap it up soon, folks, because it is warm in here. Yes, ma'am.
Just going forward, I'm Gail Cassidy. Hi.
Gail.
I live at Cumberland Avenue. You actually came to our
Remember you,
property.
Gail, yes.
We have a pipe that runs from Route 1 across and drains.
Yes.
Where does that water go? Does it just go out into the
That's a
10
good
mile,
question.
7 mile?
No, it's 7 mile. It doesn't
Yeah,
go
it
to
goes
the
to
10
7,
mile.
Gail. Yep.
So it can't be harnessed? Like, we got flooded, but we have enough of property that it doesn't come up to the home.
Yeah.
And we don't care, because we know it'll drain down. But to me, that's like a waste. It's just
stormwater.
It does,
Yeah.
but that water.
That goes into the
that's
7
piped
mile.
from
Yeah.
Washington. I remember it was from the Firestone, right? From the old
Yeah.
fire, right, from the
Yeah.
Firestone.
Yeah.
Comes down a little
Yeah,
slope.
the old Cerrone.
Yeah.
Behind
right,
Cerrone.
Right. Okay, right, where Cerrone and the.
Yeah, there was a pipe.
Firestone is, yeah.
When we bought our house, we didn't know it was there. There was a part of our property that
I've been out there several
was
times.
like a jungle
Yeah.
until we cleared it and then realized all the water drained into our property. And then,
We took it underneath, went underneath Cumberland Ave, and we had that discharge into,
Yeah, we
I'm
had
not
a
gonna say
smaller
the 7 Mile River, that's right.
We had a
But all
small
that
pipe.
tributary does flow, so we do harness it. So all that runoff, just like runoff wherever it falls, eventually falls into a watershed, that's all gets channeled down and channeled down and channeled down in that area to the 7 Mile River that feeds the water system. So we do harness that. Whatever falls into that one little pipe, there are thousands of those pipes all over the city. All that.
okay, but it is harnessed.
It has to be, yeah. Logically, it has to be. I mean, it doesn't go someplace else. It ultimately goes into the 7 Mile River Basin.
So another question. So we've lived there 53 years. And there's been times when we've had snowstorms, whatever, and we see the water coming over the dam, because the reservoirs are full. Is there a way, because climate change is happening, is there a way to harness that so when we get something like that in the future, it just doesn't go over that dam and...
So when you say the dam, are you talking about the dike at Manchester Reservoir?
No, the one at the waterworks. Do you know what I mean?
Department,
That
yeah.
You know
Right
what I mean?
over
That
on West Street.
overflow or
Yep.
whatever you see sometimes when when the Manchester is high or whatever, it flows.
Yeah, and that's actually getting right back to dredging and expansion of Orr's Pond, so we can actually keep
Now,
more of that
where
water.
exactly is Orr's Pond?
Orr's Pond is right on West Street, Route 123, right where the plant is.
Oh, that's Orr's Pond. Okay. It just questions. I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is now, but we definitely need to make changes moving forward, so we
And
don't.
I am
hear
one with a
again.
brown lawn that's been brown for 2 years. And we tied into sewer and we had hydroseeding put in. And in the spring, we could water it, but with hydroseeding, you have to keep watering it and, we lost the hydroseeding. And that was 3 years ago, so.
Sorry about that.
But anyways, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gal. Anybody else parting thoughts, sir?
Hi, Ken Arrington.
I can.
Just a thought, it literally just occurred to me. If a big strain on the system is the single-family dwellings, is there any kind of funding assistance we could get somehow or another to help the homeowners put in like an irrigation well? Like a discount, maybe pool resources, get a discounted
Well,
rate?
again,
Just an idea.
it's hard for us to give money back, you know what I mean?
Oh, it'll help
yeah.
lessen the strain on
Whether
the
there's a way
system.
we could incentivize it, I don't know. We'd have to think about it, but,
If that's a big cause, why don't we look at that?
well, I think respectfully, I think we just need to rethink what maybe we rethink lawns, maybe we rethink, and Gary and I have had this conversation, smaller houses on smaller lots, which in my opinion is where we should be, you know what I mean? But
Just an idea, just
yeah,
popped in
no,
my
I
head.
appreciate your
Share.
idea, and we need to incentivize, we can't really give money back, government's not built for that,
No,
but
but
could we try to
maybe-
incentivize?
I was thinking like the
Which is-
electric bill, you know how you pulled the supply?
Oh, the aggregation program,
Kind of like
yeah.
that. Maybe if we could find contractors that would do it at a discounted rate, if you got like 5,000 people that want to sign up for it or something, I don't know. Just a thought.
No, it's not a bad idea, because, I mean, people are gonna keep watering, no matter what we say here tonight, people are gonna keep with the lawn watering, but we're open to anything, so I appreciate the idea of this.
All right.
Thank you. Folks, parting thoughts? If not, I want to, yes, ma'am, come on down. I'm not gonna shut you down.
Circle back to something you were talking about earlier, Maureen Lynch from Holden Street. And I just wanted to ask about infants and water use and getting the word out to parents about that and availability of safe water for parents who
Yeah,
have
the
infants.
water's safe.
Yeah.
Grab one of the.
One of the flyers over there talks particularly about the manganese.
Yeah. It's just if you were concerned, you want to be extra cautious. That was the point of the bottled water, but on that form you can see and.
Yeah. And so for the record, the manganese issue and the PFAS issue, and I don't know if you said this, Courtney, but once the temporary plant is online, those issues will no longer be a concern, right? At Wading River?
PFAS won't. The manganese follows with the permanent plant in a couple
Okay,
of
so
years.
manganese comes later. Okay, so strike that. So PFAS will be better, manganese. And manganese is a weird, unpredictable,
Manganese
natural
is,
thing.
it's very cyclical to the late summer usually.
So, but we'll be filtering that out with the permanent plant, which is 5 years down the road. How many years? 3?
3.
3 years down the road, we'll have a new big Wading River treatment plant coming. So we're getting there. But anyway, in terms of getting the word out, I have to, first of all, thank you all for coming and your interest in getting information from the source. Please sign up for alert notifications. Please spread the word about what you heard here tonight, because what you heard was the truth. I know you may not want to hear it, but that's what we're here to do, is to give you the truth and then to accept your questions and frustrations. That's what you do in government, so I'm happy that you came and talked with us and met with us. And hopefully things don't get worse, but if they do, we'll meet again. We'll do this again, and we'll give you honest information from the source. Everybody good? And don't pee on the lawn, Bill. Where did Bill? Not promoting that, folks, because that's a whole different issue. Thank you all very much.